Calix and TB wanted me to go down to their studio at some point, but yeah, again, it's a time thing. One thing I
make
found
time
is,
for that, Ryan. You make time for
yeah,
Galaxy TV.
oh, 100%, 100%, and I will. But
Hello and welcome to another episode of Dirtbox Recordings, DNB Wraps. We are bringing today one of my favourite producers in drum and bass at the moment. Hailing from Norwich, he's got a brand new release with us on Dirtbox Recordings. This one has been causing mayhem in the rave world. Boomtown, Printworks, you name it. This track has been smashed in those clubs. All the way from Norwich, we've got Ryan, aka Shayper. Ryan, how you doing, mate?
yeah, not too bad at all. Not too bad at all. Just chilling on a nice Sunday.
Yeah, you look like you're
Yeah.
quite relaxed there, just on your
Oh,
sofa and
100%. I'm
legs up.
surrounded by animals as well. It's great.
Are any going to make any jumps into the podcast? You reckon? What have we got? We got cats, dogs. What we got?
Cat and a dog. Dog is fast asleep. Cat's also fast asleep. Probably not.
Okay.
To
Well,
be fair, the dog would sleep for all day if he could.
they're welcome on anyway if they want to get a bit of airtime with us. No problem at all. So I'm going to get straight into it, Ryan. I want to start from the beginning. You've been brought up in Norwich, in Norfolk, haven't you, in the UK? So
Yeah.
for anybody abroad who's not familiar with Norwich, for any of our listeners, tell us a little bit about the city and how you grew up there.
Well, it's a pretty beautiful place. Like, for sort of very medieval town, there's a big old castle and stuff. There's a fair bit to do, but it is pretty much known for having an insane amount of high-end drum and bass producers. I mean, you got Limited, Upgrade, TI, Saxons from around here, Blade Runner, and yeah, with all of that though, there is very few actual nightlife. So it's a
I
real
wasn't
contradiction of
aware.
terms.
I wasn't aware all those artists are from the local area. They're all quite near you as well. Do you know them?
Yeah. I mean, well, there's even more actually. Mind Vortex is another one that's from near here as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Junkmail and Razor. But yeah, no, it's yeah, we see each other around here and there.
I had
All
actually
good.
no idea of that. I knew Upgrade and Limited were there. I didn't know TI were there and the rest of them as well. So that's quite a drum and bass fraternity for that city. I mean, from what I see from the outside, I mean, it's only a few hours away, but there's not many drum and bass nights going on in Norwich, though, is there?
No, there's one that's quite regular, run by a friend of mine, Callum Bishop, who does a really good job of it. And there's a few other bigger ones like the Dancing Astronaut and stuff. But yeah, no, it can be really quite difficult to run an event here. There's a lot of stigma surrounding it, unfortunately.
What do you mean by stigma? What, with the area?
Well, yeah, pretty much. People see drum and bass and they're like, "Oh no, it's just going to be a lot of people doing drugs and causing trouble." But then they just ignore the amount of people go out to regular clubbing and cause even more trouble.
Yeah. I suppose you get that with a lot of the cities. I mean, I'm in Birmingham, and you know, there's a massive stigma with raving in Birmingham. Everybody thinks of the gangs and the guns and things like that, but it's few and far between when it happens, really. You know.
Of course it is. Of course it is. And it, like I say, it's just basically because the music's got a reputation, completely undeserved reputation, mind. But yeah, people just look at it and say, no, thank you, not in my city.
So what got you into drum and bass then in Norwich? Considering obviously there's a lot of people into it there. Obviously some big artists breaking through, but not many events. What got you into the scene and you doing it?
Well, basically, I mean, I think it was about 13. I was listening to the radio and I heard a drum and bass track on there, Drum Sound and Bassline Smith, Cape Fear, and I've been hooked ever since, really. So
That's a usual
18
one
years
for
now.
most people as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Quite a popular track to get hooked with. Have you got any siblings or anything that were into it? A lot of people tend to kind of pick up off their elder brothers and sisters with stuff like that as well, don't they?
No, I've got 3 younger brothers and none of them are really into it at all.
No, what do they like?
Oh, God knows. Just metal and stuff.
Yeah. What about your parents? Did you obviously, were you into it at home, and did you get any kind of support from them when you were saying, oh, okay, I want to try and get into this stuff?
Well, It's a long story with my mother, but no, she wasn't supportive at all. But yeah, my dad was actually the one who got me into producing. I mean, I was saying I'm really interested in doing this, and he's a classical guitarist, incredibly talented guitarist. And then I think it was my 15th birthday, he actually bought me a copy of Reason and a keyboard,
Okay.
and that pretty much got me started.
So how long was what when we're talking around then? Like, how old are you now? So
31 now, so it's
yeah,
16 years ago.
16 years ago. Wow. So you started in your
Yeah.
teens as well. What were you producing to start off with then? Was it drum and bass straight away, or?
Yeah, and it was crap.
Of
It was
course.
awful.
Have you still
I
got
listened
any of the
back to it.
tracks that you finished?
I can neither confirm nor deny these suspicions because I don't want anyone to hear them.
Fair play. So
Yeah.
who were inspiring you then? So you got the Cubase and you were straight into drum and bass. So you were obviously on that chain of events straight away. What artists were inspiring you to make music?
At the time, I was listening. Basically, I was going out and buying whatever albums I could. I had TC's album Evolution. I bought like Nightlife and Drum and Bass Arena mixes, and they were great. It was all like Hazard, Sub-Zero, Subfocus, Chasing Status, TC, all basically like all of the big sort of more mainstream artists at the time. I hadn't really branched out into the more sort of underground stuff because I wasn't even aware of it at the time. And then slowly over time, it's just sort of built up that whilst I still do enjoy quite a lot of mainstream stuff, it's just the underground stuff that really does inspire me.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And was it always drum and bass then? Have you ever delved into other sounds or?
Oh, I love dubstep as well. I've produced a decent amount of dubstep. I've done a bit of sort of tech house and sort of more undergroundy house stuff. But yeah, mostly drum and bass, to be honest. It's my first
Any
love.
any other aliases or actual releases with tech house and dubstep then?
Nope, not yet. Maybe one day, but no, I've not yet.
Were you around like for the dubstep kind of explosion in the UK as well? You know, like those
Yeah.
early noughties, just before it got really hard and crossed over to America. Were you doing stuff then?
Yeah. Well, I was listening to a lot of it then. Like people like Culprit, Benga, Koki, Rusko, Casper, like the usual lot. But yeah, it was I liked the deeper stuff, but for me it was really like the when it started getting really aggressive. Not the sort of bro steppy sound, but more like the actual proper hard stuff. People like Recoil, more recently Marauder, um, Trolley Snatcher, Mantis, just basically the
Yeah,
really yeah, Kill Sonic, the really hard stuff. It's just anything that has like that basically tears your face off. I was down for,
yeah.
but a lot of that sort of more Americanized bro steppy sound. It was just a bit naff, really, especially when neurofunk started going the same way for a little bit, just adding in loads of just random laser sounds. It just
Yeah,
that didn't work.
yeah. For me, it was like I think like early noughties, like you said, the Koki and Benga and things and Hatcher, they were absolutely smashing it. And then obviously you had like Magnetic Man, Scream, and they were doing all the commercial side. And I absolutely loved that. I did like Trolley Snatcher, I did like Funk Case and things like that. But it
Yeah,
seemed as though when that came about and it got quite hard, like you had Rotten Recordings. Do you remember Rotten Recordings as well?
yeah,
And you had those with Excision in the early days, but once he blew up, I think that's when it all went to pot, didn't it? And it's so weird because dubstep in the UK had like one of the fastest rises, but one of the fastest declines as well, didn't it? It literally
oh,
overnight it
absolutely,
just completely fucked off, didn't it?
yeah, yeah. It was quite sad to see, really, because I mean, dubstep still now, like there's incredible music coming out of the dubstep scene now, but it's just so few and far between. I
Yeah,
mean, when you see
some of the
people
main.
like Alex, yeah, when you see people like Alex Perez doing like insane dubstep. Oh, who did that track? That one with Foreign Beggars. Oh, I can't remember now, but yeah, it's just nice to see a lot more of the sort of minimally artists doing this really quite old school sounding, but even harder dubstep.
Yeah, yeah. There was a few that dabbled. NI did it as well, didn't they? Current Value. They
Yeah,
were doing some really techie, high level stuff, weren't they? At that point,
yeah,
it was just way different than anything else. You didn't even get, to my recollection, I don't think I heard any dubstep producers playing it, but they were dropping it in their drum and bass sets as well, weren't they?
yeah. Yeah, and weirdly, obviously dubstep's still quite large in the US, and it's been quite difficult for drum and bass to really push through. But a lot more dubstep artists in the States are playing drum and bass now, which is really good to see. Like people like Rusko, and obviously Skrillex is playing a fair bit of drum and bass now.
Yeah, yeah, they're all back on it again. It has its waves in the USA. Like at the minute, they're going through a massive resurgence as well. Like every festival's just wall to wall drum and bass lineups, and they can't bring enough artists over fast enough by
Yeah,
the sounds of it. Like it
yeah,
seems to be
absolutely.
going in a good direction, doesn't it? Definitely
Yeah,
does.
100%. Taking its time, but there you go.
Have you had any interest in going over there to play or?
I'd love to. Absolutely love to. I've had a couple of like tentative interested messages and stuff like that, but they've never really amounted to anything. I'd absolutely love to go and play over there. Um, I mean, going to New York last month was awesome, but I don't know if it was just Manhattan. There didn't seem to be many nightclubs there.
Yeah, on the outside, it's I guess it is very underground. You go there, you don't notice clubs, but clubs are everywhere in New York. They're literally just there's no signs. It's just like a little basement door, and then you're
Oh, that's
underground,
cool.
and it's absolute massive club. But there is a lot of clubs, especially in Brooklyn as well. There's a ton
All
in
right.
Brooklyn. There's a few in Manhattan, but yeah, they are everywhere. But I know what you mean. You look around, you don't walk past a nightclub, do you? But in actual fact, you walk past about 10 or 15 everywhere you go. They are there.
Wow.
They are there.
Oh,
So
that's cool.
just going back to Norwich a little bit then. So what were the first events you were attending? Did you get into the drum and bass on the raver side of it before you started producing music, or how did
Oh
you
no,
get
I
into
was
that?
I didn't actually go to my first rave until I was about 19, funnily enough. And that was a house rave in Fabric.
Oh,
That
right.
was
Okay.
my
In
first
London.
one. Yeah, in London. Yeah, I was staying down at there for uni for 3 years, and yeah, the first one I went to was this Sven Vath was playing in Fabric, and that was amazing, proper eye opener. But yeah, I didn't really have much of a chance to go out. I mean, the second year of uni, I basically just lived in Cable and Fabric at various drum and bass nights,
Yeah.
and that was amazing. But yeah, no, I'd been producing music for about 4 or 5 years before I went to any sort of events.
Okay. Okay. So that was your first in with it then. You heard the music, you produced it, and then kind of when you were old enough or they were around, that's when you started attending them then.
Yeah, pretty much, and then just even more hooked. I started learning to DJ properly at uni, which was really cool. And then yeah, I think my first actual gig was I did the uni's summer ball in Proud 2 in the O2 Arena, which was pretty mad, playing after Zone Low. And yeah, it was my first proper gig, and I've been hooked ever since.
Brilliant
I
stuff.
love DJing. It's so much fun.
Did you manage to go to any Norwich raves at all then?
Yeah, I've been to a fair few now. When I came back from uni, there was Rumble, Color, Warning. Well, Warning was a bit further out, but they did a Color versus Warning at a Rumble versus Warning at this big club in Norwich, which is now sadly shut. But yeah, I went to quite a lot, and then realistically, it took me quite a while to actually get a set at one. And since then, I've played at a few different ones in Norwich, but I've played far more outside of Norwich than I have actually in Norwich itself.
Yeah, I think that's the same for quite a lot of people as well. It's like when I used to live in Sheffield, I never hardly got gigs in Sheffield, even though I lived there. And I was probably at the time one of the more well-known names in Sheffield as well. But everything I got was literally outside of the city. I don't know what that is. It's like you almost don't get the homegrown talent playing a lot in the home cities. I guess they're just trying to bring other people in a lot and things like that.
Well, that I think that's it, to be honest. I know it's that the event space is really quite difficult at the moment because unless you've got a big headliner, you're not going to get people there, and so but then the big headliners cost more, so the events cost more, and then they don't
Yeah.
sell out as much, and so on and so forth. It's very difficult in the event scene, from what I understand.
Fair play. So you said your dad obviously supported you with the music stuff. Does he still listen to the stuff you're doing now as well?
Yeah, I don't see him a lot. He works abroad quite a bit. But yeah, like basically, he's always very proud of how I've done with music and that. Um, And yeah, he still supports. I don't I don't necessarily think he 100% likes my music because he likes metal and stuff, and mine's very different to that. But yeah, he's very supportive.
Yeah. And you, like you said, you was producing in 2015. That led up to, I believe, was your first release 2019 with Subliminal, I believe it was.
Nope.
No.
My first release was actually on Disjointed Textures Audio back in what year is it? 2023, 8 years. Yeah, 20. Oh, it was actually 2015. My
Yeah.
first release.
In the
Yeah,
same year you made it.
no, I started when I was 15, so I
Yeah.
started 16 years ago in 2007. But that was the first release I actually had in 2015.
Ah, right. Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
And that wasn't that an official release? Obviously I've been scouring Beatport and things like that, looking at your music. So what
it
happened with that release
was.
then?
It was an official release. It was on Juno, Beatport, and everything, and Spotify. But I think it's now been taken off for some reason. I'm not entirely sure why. But yeah, I can't seem to find it anywhere either.
Yeah, it's probably the label probably shut down or something like that. They tend to,
Potentially.
yeah. Some distributors, if there's nothing going in for a certain amount of time, they lose the label off, don't they? Especially if it's not,
Yeah,
after a few years, it generally isn't going to generate that much money as well, is it? So that's probably the case with it. But
absolutely.
around that time, then was that the gap between them then, or was there a few releases up until that 2019 that's still out there?
Basically, after 2015, I tried to lock in a few things. I still wasn't very good at that point. I'd been very on and off with production until then, and still weren't doing my best. And not long after that, my laptop completely died. Like I was running a MacBook, and it just cacked out, lost the hard drive, lost the backup hard drive it was backing up to, lost everything basically, all of my samples, all of my projects and stuff. And I just started to make music I was actually happy with. And then my little girl was born, so I put it on the back burner for a little bit, and then I started again in about 2018, 2019, and then had that first release on Subdivision, the Infiltrate EP. And yeah, ever since then I've not really stopped making music again, which is nice, and managed to bag some like dream releases, so it's been brilliant.
Yeah, and we'll obviously get to those in a bit. But yeah, like for the first couple of years, 2019, and then through the pandemic, there was a lot of releases with Subliminal, like I said, Subdivision, Deep in the
Yeah,
Jungle as well. How
yeah.
did those connections go about? Were there, I mean, like I said, there's a lot of releases with those labels. Were there personal friends of yours that you'd kind of started releasing with, or?
Well, basically, I'd since I was making music again, I was really sort of like putting myself out there, messaging a lot of labels and stuff like that. And then Goozy, who ran Subdivision, which is now GZ Audio, he actually picked them up and wanted me to release a few EPs, basically just keep pushing me forward and stuff like that. So yeah, I just made a lot of music for that. And I saw that DJ Hybrid wanted jungle tracks for the yearly Deep in the Jungle compilation. So I sent him tracks every single year after that point, and had it on had tracks on 3 of the compilations, which was really cool. And then he actually wanted me to remix one of his tracks, so I did Toxic Jungle,
Yeah, I know the one.
which is really cool. Yeah, it's one of my
Really good
favorites
track.
of his.
Yeah, it's a good remix as well. I do like that. And there was a flurry of music, as I said, through the last few years over the pandemic. You really got busy, didn't you? By the looks of it.
Yeah, well, basically, there wasn't a lot else to do during the pandemic, was there? So yeah, I just basically pushed myself as hard as I could. I actually started writing more musically and stuff like that, and got myself a bigger keyboard so I could actually do bigger chords, bigger musical progressions, and then just sat making music the whole time. It was great. I've I learned so much in that period. I managed to finally apply to the point where I'm really happy with it.
So yeah, and I think through the pandemic as well, that's when I met you, isn't it? We kind of got
Yeah,
talking in the Cybercunts music group that we're in on Facebook.
yeah. Initially started that with Neil Transformer and Saboteur. Basically, we just started talking to Neil a fair bit during the Black Sun Empire remix competition. That
Oh,
was
right.
yeah, that was a big turning point. I'd been talking to Nick and Shane from Kaiser and Flow for a little bit before that, and they put me onto this remix competition, and we were just talking to all of each other through it, and making a joke we should start this sort of like super group thing, and just started a group chat from it, and yeah, it's still going pretty strong now.
Yeah, for those who don't know about this, just generally around drum and bass, you tend to get added just to some random groups every now and again, don't you? Where it's just full of people talking about drum and bass, having a laugh. But this one, I mean, for me personally, when I got added to this group, I met a ton of amazing producers. Obviously, got talking to yourself, Ryan, Kai's and Flow, Transformer, Conquest, Dave Avoider, Traced is in there as well. Obviously, one of my friends. So yeah, he kind of put me in touch with a lot of people, listening to a lot of music, and in all honesty, when I got added to that group and started chatting, it's probably improved my label as well, because like I said, I've had releases from people like Beska in there, you know, yourself. Yeah, obviously got talking to Transformer, he's doing some stuff for the label. So yeah, it's kind of been a fun place to be, really, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's some insane talent in there. Again, I've learned a lot from it and been able to develop a lot more. But yeah, it's just it's a really, really good resource.
It is, and there's some lurkers in there. We know you are. We know you. We know you're watching and reading, but not talking.
That's it. I mean, I've sort of like taken a bit of a step back from socials over the last few months and stuff like that. I've had a lot going on, like an insane amount. And I do still check it a lot, but it can be quite difficult to actually be able to bring myself to write any messages some days to
Yeah.
anyone.
Yeah, it's good to have a bit of time out for it as well, because it can be quite consuming, isn't it? I mean, I did want to
Yeah.
talk to you a bit about socials as well, because one of the things that you kind of drew me to as well, talking about in that Facebook group that we got, was promoting your music on TikTok. And I was quite against it before then, but what kind of drew you into doing that and getting, because you were quite excited about it for a little while, weren't you, in terms of
Yeah.
getting yourself
I
on there?
mean, I mean, if I kept going with it now, I'm sure it would still be doing really well. But yeah, it's basically my missus put me onto it because she's on TikTok quite a bit. She watches a load of content creators on there, and she was saying that these music streams, they seem to be doing quite well. There seems to be a lot of interest in it. So I started just putting clips of my tracks up, and they started doing really well, especially live clips and that. But the massive thing for me on there was actually realizing just how much a small um, boosting payment can do. I mean, I've got tracks with several thousand plays on there with very little effort, which is really, really good. It does seem to be a really good way to sort of boost your track to a wider audience.
Yeah, the ads, like, to boost an ad, it's quite cheap, isn't it, to get some
Yeah,
good
yeah,
views? Like £3
yeah. It was
to
about
get 1,000 views and things. It's not too much.
exactly, and rather than Facebook, where it's just like, oh no, they'll all just randomly shove it in the sponsored thing, you're actually far more likely to get your post seen and actually listened to.
Yeah, because it's a scrolling video, isn't it? That's the way it's all going, kind of thing. So
Yeah,
I think, I mean, since obviously you talked about it, I started posting on there, and a few things got out there, especially, as I say, when I do the boost. But one of the things I found as well with all the things with Reels and Instagram is they've built the algorithm so much to what it's intended now for, what they want for creators and stuff. It's restricting everybody, and in a way, for me, it's took the fun out of social media, because no, you're posting stuff for your friends and things like that. Nobody's seeing it, and if you want them to see it, you've got to go and watch all these YouTube tutorials and videos of what the algorithm wants, and
yeah,
you've
and
literally got to
pay.
spend hours and learn how to actually do proper videos or social media just to get any of your mates to actually see it. So yeah, it seems to have took the fun out of it a little bit for me, I think.
Yeah, I agree. It can be really quite disheartening, especially when you put when you're posting every single day, putting a lot of effort into it, and it just never seems to improve or anything like that. It often becomes like, well, I'm putting a lot of time in for no outlay. It doesn't seem to be worth the time of putting so much in. And I found when I was posting less often that each post was getting far more interaction, which was good.
Yeah, probably trying to coax you back in or something, isn't it? It's, oh, this guy
Yeah,
hasn't posted. Let's try and coax him back in and get some interactions. But I mean, it makes sense that things do well if they're commented on and liked. But if you're having to spend hours and hours kind of working on getting it to that part, you're definitely going to lose interest unless you're literally committed to just that as well. But which we're not. We're into music and we're using that as a
Exactly.
means to an end, aren't we? Kind of thing. And plus we're always promoting, so they're going to restrict that as well. Yeah, for me, it's it's definitely taken a lot of joy out of it. And I mean, it's no longer social anymore because there's nobody seeing it. Like, what
Exactly.
what the fuck am I posting to at the end of the day?
Oh, 100%, 100%. And I'd rather spend that time making music.
Yeah,
It's just the same thing with this is yeah, basically it's like especially when you're just starting out and it can be really quite daunting because essentially you're having to spend so much time sending your tracks out to labels and networking and things like that. And it's just like, when do I have the time to make music? Especially when you work full time and you got a family.
Yeah, I
It
mean, the
can be quite a
social media
challenge.
for one release, it's at least 2-3 hours a day social media stuff if you're posting on every platform as well because you're creating
Yeah.
the content. And it's probably even longer if you start creating in it as well rather than just random posts.
Exactly, exactly. Like I sort of thought about doing tutorial videos and live streams and stuff like that, but it's just like again, I just don't really have the time to be able to do that and to make the music I want. It's such a tough balancing act.
Yeah, and especially having family as well, like myself, you've got those commitments as well, haven't you?
Yeah, yeah, very much so. Yeah, little girl takes up a lot of the time and she loves music, but like I can't exactly make it with her around very well because she just wants to push all the buttons.
Yeah.
Don't blame her, I would too. But
How do
yeah.
you juggle all of that yourself? I mean, one thing that I've tried to learn is how to juggle the music and your family life and things. Have you done it pretty well, do you think, or is there anything you wish you could have changed?
No, I think I've got it down to a really good T. I mean, the sort of the crux of it is just basically making sure that we keep time for each other, sort of having a bit of a schedule, just respecting each other's time and everything like that. Like, I normally work on music 1 or 2 times a week, and then we have one night that we spend just us two, and then the rest of the time we just spend gaming together because the office also doubles as a studio, it also doubles as our gaming room. And it's just even when I'm making music, my wife's sitting behind me playing a game, so it's all good.
Uh, yeah, so you mentioned obviously gaming. I thought we might have seen the gaming studio today, actually. So is she in there playing some games? Is she? Is that why we're
No,
here?
she's ironing at the moment.
Is she?
Yeah,
Fair play. That's one of your
yeah.
main interests outside of music, though. You mentioned as well the gaming side of it, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I've been playing games like even longer than I've been making music, to be honest. I just it's very nice to have that escape. I play a lot of first person shooters with the wife, and then I also like sort of more niche building slash survival games, things like Satisfactory, which is so dull on paper, but it's one of the most bits of fun I've had while gaming. It's brilliant, brilliant.
How many hours a week do you think you're doing the gaming side of it?
An embarrassing. No, it's not that bad. Probably about maybe 10 hours,
Okay, okay. So
10,
plenty of
15
late
hours.
nights then with those, I would
Yeah.
have thought. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. We're both terrible. We just don't realize the time. It's like 1 o'clock in the morning. We've got to be up for work in like 5 hours.
I used to love games and computer games when I was in my teens, and I think like when I got into the music, it just kind of took it away from me. Like I'd spend every weekend in an arcade, and I had every console you could think of, and I literally just stopped like that. And I've got them now. I've got the new PS. I've got a new Xbox. I've never even opened the Xbox. It's been sat there since we bought it. But it's one of those. For me, it's like if I sit down and play in the game, it's like I could be going and maybe doing some accounting that needs doing or something like that for the labels, or I need to be doing
Yeah.
this artwork. There's always something else that I think I could be more productive with, and it's pulled me away from being able to do that. Do you know what I mean? It's
Oh, I totally get it. Again, like it's a balancing act for me. Like I try and sort of balance both the things out because I love making music and I love playing games, and games honestly inspire me a lot to make more music. Like there's a lot of games with such incredible soundtracks, and the sound design in them these days is just phenomenal. So it really does inspire me to make even better music.
well, a lot of big drum and bass producers get signed to it. I've even had tracks on computer games as well. I mean, have you done that yourself? Have you had any licensing?
Not yet. That's something I do want to walk into, like move into as well, is sort of like more thematic composition. I've been writing a lot of sort of soundtrack style musical stuff, and yeah, it's something I'd very much like to do.
Well, drum and bass wise, there's a lot of drum and bass in games now, isn't there? I mean, look at GTA and all the racing games. There's tons of
Yeah,
drum and bass in them. Didn't Noisia? I think they made a whole album for a computer game once, and that was
done it
90.
twice.
Yeah, yeah, that was like
Yeah,
90% drum and bass, wasn't it?
yeah, they did the Devil May Cry soundtrack a few
That's it.
years ago. That was really good, and then they did another one recently, more recently, before splitting up. I can't remember what the game was called, but yeah, they did a whole album for that as well,
Yeah, and they were
which is just
phenomenal as
awesome.
well. I'm sure I've played some of those tracks in the clubs as well.
Yeah, yeah,
When Devil
same.
May Cry out.
There's a dubstep track on the Devil May Cry album that was just insane. It was
Yeah,
so good.
we had a track on Dirtbox by Full Contact from Birmingham. He had a track called Tornado, and that got signed. What was the racing game now? I can't remember anyway, but it was like a futuristic racing game, and it got, as soon as we put
Wipeout.
it out, Wipeout. That's it. Yeah, we had the
Yeah.
track signed to that. There's the full drum and bass track. Like I say, it wasn't even
Oh, that's awesome.
edited for the game or anything like that at all. So speaking of gaming, obviously you've got to have a very powerful computer to do things like that. And you've talked to me about building PCs before. I think we've spoken to it in the chat
Yeah.
group. Did you build your gaming computer and also your music computer yourself then?
They're the same thing at the moment.
They're all in one.
Yeah. And I built my wife's gaming computer as well.
Okay. What do you like
We've
about
got
doing that then? There's a lot to it, isn't there, to get it right?
um I it's just a lot of fun to build it. I love just like putting everything together. It's like Lego, really. A lot of the stuff really does go together quite easily and just looks nice. And then you've got the satisfaction of having, oh, I've built that and now it works,
Yeah.
which is amazing.
Have you
But
built any for anybody else in drum and bass? Anybody else
not in
doing the
drum and
Shayper?
bass, but I used to do basically build computers for friends at uni.
What's the most powerful one that you built? How much did it cost?
The most powerful one that I built was my computer at uni. I had a full water cooling loop that I did myself in it. The best graphics card at the time with a water cooling block on it. And yeah, it was insanely powerful. Insanely powerful.
What was that
Could play
worth?
anything. It's about 2.5 grand at the time, and this was
Okay.
about 10 years ago. So
What's the top, like, in terms of building PCs then for gaming? Like, what's kind of the top spec that you could be paying out? Are you talking? Is that roughly going to always be around? I mean, at the minute, because the technology is improving all the time. You know, it's like, what's a 3 grand PC now? In 5 years' time, it's probably not going to be worth that. There'll be something else that's out that's probably at that price.
exactly.
But do you right now? Can you get that spec even higher? Do you think? Is it worth
Oh,
getting any higher
100%.
than that?
The computer I've got is absolutely perfect for what I need. It's worth about 1,200 quid, but I think you can go silly money. I mean, just the toppest end graphics card at the moment is like nearly 2 grand
Hmm.
just for the graphics card, let alone the processor.
And would that just be needed
Everything else.
though? I mean, unless you're running a massive screen, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah, it's basically for people running 4K in games at max graphics. But yeah, it's honestly, it's not really worth it for me. I can play the games I want to. I don't need the best graphics in the world, just as long as they work and as long as my music works. That's the main thing.
And you say you're running all your music studio through the same PC as well. What's your
Yeah,
door of choice? What are you using and running through it?
Bitwig. Bitwig is incredible. Like I was running Ableton before, but Bitwig is an absolute game changer for me. There's just so much cool shit you can do with it. The polygrid is one of the most batshit and fun things I've ever used in music. Basically, if you don't know what Bitwig polygrid is, it is a build your own instrument effects unit. Everything you can set up arpeggiators in it. You can route whatever you want through whatever you want, and it's ridiculous. Like I have made some really, really mental sounds using the polygrid, and I haven't even scratched the surface. When you can use a random dice roll to determine a variable in one of your synths, so that's when you know they're dealing with some weird shit.
Have you always used that in Ableton then? Because you said you started with that. Was that the first DAW you had with your computer to start with?
Well, the first DAW I started with was Reason, way back when. That's the one my dad bought me, and I used that for quite a while. But the only problem is I was running Reason 3 when I moved on to my MacBook, worked absolutely fine. But as soon as my MacBook's operating system updated, it just wouldn't run Reason anymore. So I switched to Ableton then.
Reason
And
still
yeah,
going? Are they still
yeah,
going?
Reason's still going. Yeah.
Better than
Volatile
years.
Cycle used it.
Ah, right, okay. Because when I started off writing music, I was on Cubase, and I used to patch Reason in. So it was just like
Yeah,
I wasn't using it as my main DAW, but I'd patch it in obviously for everything and that. And like you said, it got to a point where you couldn't actually use it with certain things, so that drifted away. And then Ableton came on the table, and that was a game changer. The only time I'd
yeah.
ever opened Cubase after that was just for mix downs, just to kind of get, because the sound drivers early on in Ableton, they weren't the best.
No, no. But yeah, Ableton was was really great. But then I just saw that Bitwig was rent to own on Splice, and I was like, I'll give this a go. And then I haven't gone back to Ableton since. It just the workflow. It's made by ex Ableton devs, and the workflow is just so much better for how I work.
Yeah, the first person I heard using that was probably about 5 or 6 years ago. It's Hamilton.
Yeah,
He was doing posts about it after posts all the time. I was like, I really want to give this a try. And I still to this day I've not done it. And recently I've had Impex saying, right, we are going to sit down. I want you to book a day off work, and I'm going to take you through Bitwig and get you on there. So everybody's shouting about it nowadays, though.
yeah.
So I've got to take the plunge, definitely.
Oh, 100%. There's a few things that are different to Ableton, but not really anything that I ever used. It's more there's more for my sort of creative style than there was with Ableton. And honestly, the user interfaces are so much nicer. That's one problem with Ableton. It hasn't really changed the interface in since it started, and it's looking for me quite dated,
Yeah, yeah, I get
like
what
an
you.
Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah, it's apart from the colours, yeah, it's still got that kind of blocky feel to it, hasn't it? Really,
Yeah,
yeah, I get what you're saying. So, was all the music that you did from 2019 onwards, was that Ableton or Bitwig?
it was all Ableton up until last year when I picked up Bitwig,
Okay, okay.
and then I've been on that completely since.
So we're talking about obviously your music releasing on quite a few labels in the last few years, predominantly GZ Audio and
Yeah.
GTA. Big up to Goozy, big up to the Solar Boys as well with their labels. Two phenomenal labels.
Yeah.
What's your involvement with both of these guys? And obviously in the background, because I know you do a little bit of work with them, not just actually releasing music. Is that right?
Um. Well, with GZ, it was all basically releasing music, and the same with GTA. Really, I do need to actually hit up James again with some more music at some point. But yeah, I released with them for quite a bit, and then basically not long after I started with GTA, that started putting a couple of tracks out on GTA. I actually got hit up for RAM. So yeah, then they want an exclusive contract, so I haven't been able to do anything since.
No, of course. We'll get to the
Yeah.
RAM stuff in a bit. That's obviously one of the more recent escapades that you've been on. But one thing I did want to ask you as well, because you are the second interview I've had now where I've asked this question. Your style of drum and bass, for me, it isn't sitting in any subgenres. And I fucking love that. I absolutely love it. So if you want, it's not quite neurofunk, it's not quite rollers. Do you know what I mean? These subgenres we got, it's definitely not liquid, it's not jump up. What do you class your drum and bass music as if you were to put it under a subgenre, do you think?
That's honestly, I don't really know. I don't like just making any one particular style, like especially with or even one particular genre. I much prefer just when I'm sitting at the laptop, just not just go, oh, I want to make this track, I want to make that track, I want to make a track like this. I just basically just start and see where I end up.
What do you
It's
think?
sorry,
Sorry.
go on.
No, carry on what you were saying. Sorry, mate.
But yeah, I don't know. I just like making creative stuff. And if it comes out as jump up, brilliant. If it comes out as neurofunk, brilliant. Just however it comes out.
So it really was a happy accident then for you to kind of have that sound. You think it's just something that came from you? It wasn't purposely trying to head in a certain direction. It just came out.
Exactly. So I have no musical training at all. I barely know any music theory. I've just taught myself a lot of different things over the years, and one thing I am lucky to have is I can hear really well what sounds good and what sounds shite. So I basically just kept going and kept pushing until things were sounding good to me. And then, yeah, just like I say, whatever it is, as long as it's got some musicality to it, as long as it's got some edge to it, I'm more than happy making it.
That's good to hear. I mean, a lot of people are scared to actually jump into music production because they think you've got to have a heavy amount of music theory or a background in playing the drums and things like that. So you literally just kind of YouTube tutorials, picking it up, accidents here and there, and just educating yourself then.
Exactly, exactly. I think the most progress I've made is just messing around with various things. Like I don't have a lot of VSTs that I use, purely because I like picking one up and messing around with it as much as possible, seeing what each thing does, how each thing modulates the sound, and eventually just learning it. I mean, I learned one of my favorite tricks that I do just messing around with serum. I used a comb filter and it on a really low frequency with quite a high resonance, and it just made like, I mean, you listen to some of my tracks, that sort of like dissonant foghorny sound from Mindfulness is very much all comb filter based. Unchained as well,
Yeah.
that's all comb filters. And yeah, that like it doesn't really, it means it sits slightly out of key, but sometimes that sounds really good. It just adds that sort of anxiety inducing edge to it, which is really cool for a sort of darker track.
Yeah. Your official releases, though, in the last few years, while there've been many, they don't seem to have been the majority as well, because you've been putting out some heavy amounts of music in your dub packs as well on SoundCloud, haven't
um yeah, I put out one dub pack that did really quite well, and I've put out a few free downloads. But yeah, that dub pack I just had, it was sitting on a load of music that didn't really seem to fit on any one particular label, so I thought I can actually do with a bit of money from music, so let's put out a dub pack. And yeah, that did really quite well,
Were you
so
just
I was happy with
previewing it
that.
on SoundCloud, and did you set it up with a Patreon or anything like that?
No, I was just previewing it on SoundCloud and just getting people to message me and PayPal me the money, and I'd send them over the Dropbox link, and yeah, that worked really well.
Brilliant. And there's about 21 tracks in there, isn't there, in the dub pack?
There was 10 on the dub pack. I did 10 for £10, which is like,
Yeah.
a lot of people put out a very small amount of tracks for a lot of money, and I didn't want to do that because like I have a full-time job. It's not my main source of income, so the money is a bit inconsequential. But at the same time, I wanted to give back to the community a little bit, for all of the support. And yeah, that did really quite well.
Is it still available now? Can people still pick it up?
No, sold out.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. So, yeah, unlucky if you missed that one, but I think you can still hear the clips, can't you? They're still here or
yeah,
there
exactly. Yeah,
online
I'm going to keep
somewhere.
it up on SoundCloud.
But you're, I mean, for you, you're really good with wanting to get your music out there. Like I said, you share a lot of the music for people to hear in some of our groups. You can definitely hear them all on your SoundCloud. What are your thoughts in kind of people sharing music and stuff like that as well? Because people generally, they like to keep it right close in and don't let anybody hear it until it's about released. You're very much the opposite of that. What's your frame of mind with that?
I it's a tough one, really. I very much think there's again a balance to be struck. If you're just like pushing out music constantly over and over again, like multiple uploads a day, then I think the saturation point can become very much reached. But at the same time, it's so important to for people to realize that you're still about, because there is an insane amount of competition. And whilst it's not like a competition to better each other and stuff, there's definitely a competition of who can be seen. And if you're not constantly, well, not even constantly, if you're not regularly putting out what you're doing and showing a progression, that interest can very quickly fade.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, like I said, is we hear a lot of your music forthcoming to give feedback. There's the dub packs again, like I say, on SoundCloud as well. So it's almost like there is a wealth of Shayper music out there for people to hear as well, and kind of see what journey you're going on with the sounds that you've got as well.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sitting on a lot of music that's not been put anywhere at the moment, which is really cool. I've tried to keep, I mean, like I say, whilst I do put up tracks regularly, I do try and keep a fair bit just for me. So when I do get sets and stuff, like people get to hear very fresh music.
Yeah. How many tracks have you made this year, do you think?
Oh, I'm not sure actually. Maybe it's not been my most prolific year ever, 'cause a lot of things going on, but probably about 10 or 15.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's pretty good. I mean, you got your computer back this year as well, didn't you?
Yeah.
And you were really on a roll, weren't you, at that time as well when that happened?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, again, I was having laptop issues before this. I was really struggling to make any music at all. It was just getting very old and becoming an issue. But then, yeah, I managed to be able to get myself a PC, and I have got quite a lot of projects on the go on it. And yeah, I'm very much looking forward to
Yeah.
getting some of those finished.
I think you knocked that remix together for me in about 6 hours, and it was a done deal, weren't it? By the end of the day, I'd only
Uh,
sent you the parts in the morning.
yeah, I like working quickly. I do struggle to go back to tracks once I finish them. Some tracks I've got up to like version 8 and stuff, but a lot of the ones I've released of the first version, I'm very much like just plowing through an entire track in one session. I found myself, one of the issues I had before when I first started releasing back in 2015 was I was overcomplicating everything, making sure everything was sounding good and becoming too much of a perfectionist. And it was really hampering any output at all, to the point where I wasn't actually, well, finishing tracks because they weren't finished. I can't remember who said it, but someone said, art is never finished, it's abandoned. And I think that's a very good point.
Yeah.
You get to a point where you, if you keep going, you're just never ever going to finish it. So at one point, you need to say that's enough. And yeah, I like working through music quickly. I've got a really good workflow for that, and I don't use loops or anything like that. I pretty much make everything in the track, like just either through drum samples and synthesis and stuff like that. And I have got a really good structure for how I like writing musical stuff. Again, I don't really use loops for that. It's all basically using plugins. Like I use a lot of string plugins, piano plugins. I've got this amazing one called Falcon, which is just incredible.
So I just want to talk about some of your interests outside of music as well. One of the things you mentioned to me is you like collecting Yu-Gi-Oh trading cards. Is that right?
Yeah, that's been a thing over the last year. I've now got the stupid amount of them. It's great. It's like it's again, it for me it's all about creativeness in it, and with that you can really come up with some really unique creative strategies, and I really love the challenge. It has helped my problem solving and reasoning become a lot better. I go to tournaments quite regularly, do quite well. So yeah, I mean it's not cheap, not
So
cheap
for
at all.
anybody thinking about these Yu-Gi-Oh cards, what are they? Explain what they are.
So it's similar to Pokemon cards. So basically, you buy packs, you get cards out of it, you can build a deck out of them, and you can face off against someone else with it. I have 4 decks at the moment that I use, but my main one is yeah, it's pretty much maximum rarity. You get different rarities of cards, and the higher the rarity, the more expensive they are. I think my most expensive card's worth about 200 quid just for one.
Have
And
you
there's
bought that
60.
outright as well, have you? Or has that just been lucky
Uh,
in a pack that you got?
no, I traded for it.
Yeah.
So I traded a few cards I weren't using for it, and yeah, it's really good.
I'm way off for thinking of stuff like that. I think the closest I've got to those cards is when in the 80s we had things like Garbage Pail Kids cards. And then obviously you had the WWE wrestling cards as well with the
Yeah.
points on and thing. That's about the closest to it as well.
Well, you collect sneakers, don't you? So it's not too different.
Oh, what gives you that impression? I think that's quite a big thing, though, is in music as well. I do come across a lot of producers and people involved. They're collectors of something. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
We're almost like, it's weird. We hoard something, don't we? There's always something there. And
exactly.
I've always been terrible for it. You know what I mean? Jumping from different things and getting interest in it. Would you say you've got a bit of a insatiable interest in it that you can't stop buying these cards, or is it just it's a bit on
It's more
the side?
honestly, yeah. I very much like opening packs because you never know what you're going to get. It's like a little bit of a lottery each one, but it's more just constantly trying to improve with it and everything like that. Again, it's more about the progression for me, more about the development of myself and development strategy and logic. And yeah, it's honestly, I would be I'd go every week if I could.
What makes you want
Tournaments.
to go with these cards then, as opposed to the Pokemon? Because the Pokemon ones come, like, I mean, fucking Logan Paul's got $1 million one round his neck on a chain, hasn't
Yep.
it? The Pokemon.
Yep.
So why the Yu-Gi-Oh ones? Why not Pokemon?
Basically, Yu-Gi-Oh is a lot more complex. It's often called a lawyer's game for children.
Right. Okay.
Because they're honestly like the rules of them. I mean, when you look at a card and it's about that big, and it's got the entire bottom half of it is tiny little text that you can barely read about dictating all of the effects and what you can and can't do with it. It's so much fun. And then trying to build balance that strategy against other people's cards, especially when there's over 12,000 cards in the whole game. You have to remember a lot and plan a lot.
Is it Japanese? Is it?
Originally, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely had not come across that. I mean, obviously I knew about Pokemon and things like that, but yeah, I would have thought anybody who'd be into those things would probably be going for the value in that. So if this is an actual harder game for people to do, this is
Yeah,
the more grown up version than a Pokemon, basically. Is that what
exactly.
it is?
So yeah, I mean, Pokemon is from I've never really played the trading card game against other people, but it does seem a lot more basic.
What's the
The
most expensive card you can get?
I think one went for a couple of $100,000 last year.
Oh wow! So it
Yeah.
is up there then. I mean,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
100%.
definitely.
Yeah, like I think a lot of even like the normal rarity stuff, just like staples cards that a lot of people would use in a lot of different decks. I think I've got one of them. I managed to get lucky and got one of them from a pack recently, and it's worth about £80, and you run that in every deck.
Yeah. So there's a lot going on in your life at the minute then, Ryan, isn't there? I mean, we're building computers, we're gaming, we're producing music, you've
Yeah.
got the cards. How do you get time for DJing? Because I know you're doing that as well, aren't you?
Um. Basically, I don't DJ as often as I'd like, but yeah, it's just more a case of just planning everything around what I want to do. I mean, with DJing, it's depend if I have a set coming up, I'll make sure I'm all prepared for that. But I do try and like make sure that I space in that preparation time with my family and time to do the other things as well. Because if you focus too much on one thing, the rest of your life can suffer. So I like to very much have that balance and keep busy.
Yeah. And you had a massive gig as well, didn't you? DJing at the Printworks for RAM. That was huge.
Yeah, that was incredible. I've had quite a few quite big gigs over the years, but that was the biggest one recently, and it was awesome. I mean, I was actually in Tenerife last September when I got an email asking if I wanted to play, and I snapped up the opportunity. It was so cool. I got to meet some musical heroes there. I was like sitting in the green room chatting away to Mob Tactics and Leveler was just insane.
Great stuff. Take me through the day then. Obviously, are you prepared for playing there? Just anybody listening has obviously got big gigs like this to see if there's anything different they're doing. You wake up in the morning, you're ready. Have you planned and prepared everything before then, or is it all on the day?
I've normally, well, I definitely would have my USB sticks sorted out really quite in advance. Obviously, adding any extra tracks I want to play that I either make or get sent through. And yeah, it's quite a nerve-wracking day. We had to wake up at 8 because driving all the way down to London, then getting across London on the tube because it was it's quite central in London, especially because whenever we go down to London, whenever I'm playing down there or something, we park up at Cockfosters and get the tube in. It's the best way because trying to drive through London's a nightmare.
No, don't ever drive in London.
No,
I don't know why people do it. I really don't. You can get a
no, not
train
at all.
from here in the Midlands. It takes 1 hour, and then you're just on the tube. So I can get to any club in London quicker than I can probably actually get into Birmingham Centre if I'm driving.
Yeah.
It's
Well, it's
phenomenal.
the same with us. It's the same with us. It's 2.5 hours on. Well, it's about 2 hours on the train. That's about 2 hours to drive, but then you've got to factor in parking and tube and everything. But yeah, um, it's just I'd much rather make sure I have plenty of time, not rush myself and everything like that. It's just not worth the hassle.
So you're not like me then. I'm usually forgetting my USB stick needs sorting, and I'm doing it the night before, and I'm up to like 6 a.m. the night before the gig actually sorting my stick. You've got it done way in advance then, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I don't plan out my sets from start to finish. Like I'll normally have a few. I'll test out a lot of different mixes beforehand, like see which tracks go well together, see what I can do, sort of gauge a general outline. But most of the time, I just when I'm actually behind the decks, I forget my outline and I will just mix whatever I want and just remember the doubles that work well, remember the blends that work well, and just go like that. I honestly find that when you fully prepared a DJ set, like from start to finish, it doesn't always go the way you want, especially if you've planned it, but the crowd aren't really feeling it, and then you carry on with it and you start losing the crowd. It's just not worth it. I much rather play to the crowd and just go with the flow of it.
Yeah. I've debated this a lot because if you look at a lot of the top acts in drum and bass, they have all fully planned out their set for the majority of them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And you can tell by the technicality of, the drops they're doing. I mean, Andy C definitely isn't doing all of those double drops on the fly. He's practiced some of them. Do you know what I mean? That's how he's so good. So it's like, is this a case for, okay, if you're going to plan the whole thing out, you can probably, if you're top talent, because people are just going to be there for your name. But when it comes to smaller talent like me or you, it's better to kind of read the crowd, because I've never ever planned a full set. I know I have about 4 to 5 tunes I may start with, and then I'll have a folder of tunes that at some point I'm going to play, and then
yeah,
everything else is just kind of, okay, let's see how it's going to go from there.
yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I find that like making a playlist is very important, because if you don't have a playlist of tracks that are properly tagged, properly beat gridded and stuff like that, you can really quite struggle on the fly thinking, because you get was it choice paralysis, where you've got, especially when you're DJing and suddenly you're thinking, oh, what track do I bring in next, and you've got a folder of 1,000 and they're not sorted out or anything like that. You're like, oh, I don't know what to play next. Panicking. But
One of the big things
having a
I've had,
playlist,
definitely.
yeah, when you've got a playlist of a couple of hundred tracks and stuff, and you just go through practicing, going through all of them, just having a mix through your tracks beforehand, and then just seeing what works well together, what doesn't work so well together, what kind of is a good energy switcher, that kind of thing. It very much helps. So when you actually go and do the set, you've got that knowledge of what works well together. Oh, I definitely want to play this. Oh, maybe the crowd isn't feeling this track, like that kind of track. I'm going to play this track instead, and then if you've got that preparation sorted,
Yeah.
it's going to be a much better time behind the decks.
Yeah, I found that I suffered with that for quite a few years. It was one of the main reasons was due to not having too many gigs. So when that happens, you've got a folder of music that's mounting up and it's
Yeah,
mounting up, and then you finally get a gig and you take too much music to the gig. And what I found is when I was going out with less music, my sets were better straight away. Even if I'd not practiced, they were just a lot better, and I could
yeah,
move and flow with the music just a little bit easier. Because, like you said, it becomes a bit overwhelming, don't you, if you're taking out 300-400 tracks on a USB, especially new.
exactly. And yeah, I like taking out a lot of new tracks, because one thing I found, because I used to have a weekly show on Rough Tempo, and one thing I found was that if I wasn't updating my USB regularly, I'd just keep going back to the same old tracks time and time again. So I like to have a sort of clean out of the USB and then reevaluate playlists and stuff like that. I think that's very important.
You've got to mix a set regular as well, can't you? So if you are having few and far between gigs and you're suffering with this, make sure you're doing an hour set at home, get a radio show somewhere, do a live stream, just to make sure you are playing that music and you feel what you feel. It's
Exactly.
a lot different, isn't it?
Yeah, and especially if you record a good mix at home, it's really good promotion stuff. I used to like really I don't have a proper setup at the moment. It's all in the garage, but I do have a small pair of decks that I used to practice here and there. But I find it very, very important to just keep your hand in, because it's like any skill. If you don't keep it sharp, you'll lose it.
Do you like to put a lot of your own productions in your sets? And what would you say the percentage is as opposed to other artists?
It's tough to say really. I do like putting a lot of my own music in, but I feel like it has to fit the vibe. Obviously, I've got quite an eclectic sort of production style. If I can't exactly mix in some like ambient techno into my sets, but I do like putting a lot of the harder stuff in. Again, it kind of really depends on the set and depends on what music I've made that I'm feeling recently. But yeah, I do tend to put quite a few of my own tracks in.
Like we said earlier, your music does stand out. It can't be classed in a subgenre, and there's few artists out there like that. So when you're doing your sets and you're putting your tracks in there, what other artists are kind of go to that generally fit with your tracks? Because they are very individual sounding. There's nothing else like it in drum and bass, I feel, at the moment with what you're doing.
I like a lot of the more technical artists, people like Bunshin, people like Zatis, Transformer, Kais, and Flow. Just that hitting that sort of line between creativity and heaviness, really. I tend to just put in a lot of tracks that I'm feeling, regardless of the subgenre, because there's often going to be those sort of intermediary or interstitial tracks that you can use to blend between the various styles, which is great. But yeah, I really like the real hard technical stuff. Like I say, people like Bunshin, Noisia, all that kind of
Yeah,
thing.
good choice.
Again,
I think that's probably where you're going to find the best fit, if any, isn't it, really, with
yeah,
those?
yeah.
Definitely. Have you hit up Vision Records or recording, should I say, with any music?
No, no, not yet. One day maybe, but I'm just trying to sort of like build up a real good portfolio of individual stuff again at the moment before I start sending stuff out again. But yeah, I have like I've had a decent success rate with sending out music to labels, but honestly, I swear a lot of labels just like they'll have a demo inbox and just never listen to it.
Yeah, that's the problem. You've got to get those direct links, haven't you, really? That's
Yeah.
one of the main things. But I would have thought Vision and maybe even Critical would be a good home for some of your music as well sometimes.
Yeah, potentially. It's definitely something that I'm thinking about. I just want to make sure that I have, because whilst I have quite an eclectic style, I like to have a release all sounding not the same, but in a similar sort of vein.
Yeah. And you mentioned
So
some collaborations as well that you're doing. I know you were working with Kais and Flow. I know you've done some stuff with Transformer. In fact, he's got some bits coming out with you as well. Are
yeah.
these still on the cards and coming out? And have you got any other collaborations in mind that you're wanting to try or that's on the table?
Um, yeah, I've got a few things running in the background. It's having the time recently to follow them up and stuff like that. But yeah, I've been talking with quite a lot of artists about doing tracks with them. It's just whether or not we get the time. Like Calix and TB wanted me to go down to their studio at some point, but yeah, again, it's a time thing.
Yeah.
I One
You
thing I
make
found
time
with
for that, Ryan. You make time for
yeah.
Galaxy TV.
Oh, 100%, 100%, and I will. But it's like I've had a few issues with collabs in the past where it's been like I've finished my bit and I'm waiting months, and it can be quite difficult with communication and stuff like that. Or if like the track is exactly how I feel it should be, but then some changes are made that kind of take it away from that, and then there's a bit of conflict of ideas. But it's all good. It's just part of the process.
You
Um,
enjoy the collaborating? Is it something
oh,
you definitely
I, I
enjoy?
I very much do. But yeah, especially when mental health's a bit struggling, it can be really quite difficult to be able to collab, because then you
Yeah.
have the anxiety of letting other people down and things like that.
I had the exact same conversation with the artist Lemmy Dubs a few months ago. Did an interview
Uh,
with, and he actually suffers
yeah,
from autism. And he had not. I'd asked him about collaborations and how come he'd not, because every track he'd put out for like 10 years was just him on his own.
yeah.
And I asked him about that, and he said he was just scared to kind of let his work go to someone because the buildup of anxiety was just way too much. But this year he actually did it. He actually let it go out, and he's had a couple of collaborations, and they've actually gone down really well. I believe one of them was with Clarky, his first collaboration ever, and now Deadmau5 is smashing it in every single set. His first
Oh,
ever
that's
collab.
awesome.
So it does work. But talking about obviously the mental health side of it, and obviously with music, like I say, I had a big conversation with him about that. How big of a part do you feel music plays into mental health and helping you, and support?
I think it very much helps a lot of the time. Sometimes it can do the opposite, especially with the social media side of things and the oversaturation side of it. The constant sort of pressure, it can be really, really quite difficult. But I have always used music as an outlet for mental health. I think it's been absolutely invaluable for being able to basically get emotions off my chest into my music. But yeah, I think when your mental health's bad and your music's not going so well, it can really sort of create this vicious cycle.
Do you turn to it quite a lot if you are obviously having issues or just feeling down and things like that? Is it a good cure for you most of the time, do you think?
Listening to music is 100% a good cure for it, but I think sometimes, depending on the mindset, making music can make it worse. Especially if you one thing with my studio sessions is like if I catch a vibe, like I say, I'll have the whole track finished and get it sorted. But if I don't catch a vibe and end up getting frustrated, it can be really quite a challenging period.
What best advice could you give somebody to kind of avoiding those things, do you think?
Take care of yourself. Make time for yourself. Try and learn as much as you can about yourself and work with yourself to better yourself. Basically, I've been to therapy and stuff like that, and it's been incredibly helpful. But yeah, learning the best ways to manage yourself is often the best way. Like
Yeah,
as soon as you know what to avoid and what can help, it really does. It really is a game changer.
one of the things I found as well is little wins, mini wins, I call them. So you've always, if you're in, like you said, you're in music, and that kind of build up to trying to be a success with things can obviously affect your mental health. But along the way, if you're planning little mini wins along the way, something to be proud about. Okay, well, today I actually finished this, and that was a mini win for me. Building those along the way, that seems to be something I feel that helps quite a lot.
Yeah, yeah, little wins are important. Any win is really, even if it's just like, oh, I turned on my computer today and messed around with a few samples, that's better than nothing.
If that's your plan, that's your plan.
Yeah,
Making your bed in the
exactly.
morning, that's a mini win. Do you know what I mean?
It,
It all helps. It all helps.
exactly. It's those small attainable goals. Like if you're setting yourself big plans, like I need to get myself an EP done by the end of the month, you can end up becoming like when you're not getting it done, it's just like you're failing yourself and it makes it even worse. But once you've got like little goals like today I'm going to do a bit of sound design, and if something happens, great. If it doesn't, also great. It means I've still done it. And yeah, like you say, little wins are important.
Yeah, and there's an overall bigger picture. I mean, obviously, one of the big wins that you've had is the signing to RAM. That's one of the things you're most notorious for now, where your name is concerned. But was that an overlapping goal for you? Was RAM the pinnacle, or is there
um
anything beyond that?
Well, it was one of the dreams. One of my first drum bass compilations was Andy C Nightlife 3, which I rinsed to the point the CD got scratched because I was just playing it too much. And yeah, I mean, since then, Run was always one of my dream goals, and getting tracks on there was incredible. But I don't want that to necessarily be the pinnacle. There's so many other things I want to try and really, so many other labels I want to release on, so many other opportunities I want to get, and I think uh, learned a lot about myself over the last year. And whilst certain things have gone really well, other things outside of my control haven't gone so well. So it's been like reevaluating my goals and realizing that whilst I have achieved an absolutely incredible thing, there is still more that I could achieve.
Yeah, you can always rest on being proud of that as well. But setting those goals obviously is going to give you something to aim for. What other
Yeah.
goals do you have? Is it all around releasing on labels? Do you have any goals DJ wise, or just any success in the music industry at all? Is there any other goals coming?
I really want to try and play a festival because I haven't actually played a festival yet. That's one thing I'd love to do. I'd love to play in the States I'd love to do more gigs abroad because I've only had a couple so far, and I really would like to try and do more. But yeah, I mean, I would love to, like I say, do more thematic composition for like TV, films, and media, and games. But yeah, I think the main goal for me at the moment is rebuilding back to a regular schedule and regular production cycle.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And with obviously playing abroad, where were the places that you played?
I've played in Belgium, in Liège. I did a set over there, which is really cool. I've done a small gig in Holland as well.
Oh, right, okay, excellent. Whereabouts in Holland were you?
I can't remember now. It was quite a while ago. I think it was like, yeah, no, it was actually in Amsterdam.
Yeah, Cheeky Mondays, was it?
No, I
No,
wish.
that's the most popular one there, isn't it? On Monday
Yeah.
nights, absolutely rammed in Amsterdam. Who'd have
So
thunk
I've
it?
heard. So I've heard.
Great event. So apart from obviously that, Rams brought around, as we said, the Printworks gigs. Tell us a little bit about how the Ram deal started. Were you sending tracks in? Did they contact you for music out of the blue? How did it start right up until you had that release? Give us the timeline.
Well, basically, somewhat. I can't remember who I was talking to. I think it was Solar actually. Basically said like, oh, why don't you send some of your music into RAM? It's really quite good. And they gave me the email address for the label manager at the time, and I sent it in, and they signed it. It was really really easy actually. The whole process, not like with a lot of labels where I've been like constantly been sending music and constantly waiting for feedback of not hearing anything, and then yeah, Ram just snapped it up. It was really cool. It
Brilliant.
was my first EP on program. They just pretty much snapped that all up in one go.
No changes or anything like that. It was let's
Nope.
go.
Yeah, there was absolutely let's go. It was amazing.
And what was the deal for future releases? Was it just a case of okay, let's get this music, out with you and go from there?
Yeah, exactly. So they just wanted to see what other music I'd send in. I sent in a load of music a bit later. They signed another EP, and then they wanted me for main label. I
With
released
the
one track
single
on
as
the
well,
main
didn't you?
label. Yeah, I released it on the Ram annual last year, Mindfulness, and that did really well. And yeah, I was going to be doing an album, but like I say, things outside of my control have probably put a spanner in that works, and we'll see where we go from here.
Do you think you could potentially put an album together and just maybe shop that out, or are you just
I
kind of just
I
stopping at
definitely
that?
have I definitely have an album's worth of music. I don't necessarily think that I would want to release that album at the moment. I definitely want to find a sustainable home first before I think about doing that again, because I had a lot built up for it, and obviously when things didn't go quite as planned,
Mm.
I've had to reevaluate a fair few things with that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's brought us around to the Dirtbox release. Here we are finally. We got the music. I've been bugging you for about a year but we got there in the end. And lo and
Yeah,
behold, you let me sign probably one of the biggest tracks you've had support with, and that's the
yeah,
Ingrate VIP. Sorry, Ingrate VIP.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
Ingrate, tell us a little bit about this track and how it came about to be a VIP, and then we'll talk about the support.
Yeah, so the original track, I wanted to try something a bit different, sort of do a more switchy up style, which I've then used on a lot of other tracks. I just want a big foghorn and a sort of like musical, like refrain as well with it, and yeah, that was great fun to make. And the original was actually there's actually a really cool video of it where that sent Harry Shotter speechless, because I think it was TJ from Pick and Mix was playing on a Code Red live stream with Harry Shotter on the mic, and yeah, that sent him speechless. It was great.
Have you got a copy of the video?
Somewhere I'd have to dig it out,
You need to
but
dig
yeah,
that out. That's gonna be the whole part of my promo. I think definitely if you can find that video out. Excellent
but
stuff.
yeah. So that was the original, and that went on my dub pack, and I'd never actually done a VIP before really, and I thought I might give it a go, and it came out far harder than I was expecting.
Yeah.
Honestly, like, geez, that track is insane. And then yeah, I started sending that out to a few people. Calex and TB absolutely loved it. They played it multiple gigs now. They've been playing a fair few tracks of mine over the last couple of years as well. And yeah, Ed Rush loves it, but he
Well, let's
played that at the Virus Weekend
yeah,
Weekender.
let's not beat around the bush. Let's say exactly what's happened. So Calix and TB have played it in every fucking major set they've had. They played it main
Yeah,
stage Boomtown. They played it on every gig on an 8-leg tour of the USA, every other festival as well. So they have really been supporting this one as well, haven't they? It's been blowing up
yeah.
in their sets.
Oh,
Absolutely.
absolutely. And I think one of the coolest experiences I've ever had was when I was playing at Printworks. I went towards the main, after my set, I went towards the main room to go and see Calix and TB, and I heard it. And I just ran, sprinted towards the main room to get a video of it. Oh, it's so cool.
And it was Calix and TB playing it at Printworks as well, was it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
brilliant
That
stuff.
was mad. That was mad. Just not
That's
long
great.
after I played it myself.
Yeah, that's great to have some support like that. And I think
Yeah,
obviously now the release is out as well, we'll probably hear it quite a lot more as well, isn't it? Because I know a lot of
yeah,
people have been waiting on this one. You always see ID on the videos and things like that as well, all the
yeah.
comments.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's yeah, seeing the feedback on the release has been really great as well.
Well, that's another big blow up for you there. I mean, if somebody was to ask you some advice, they want some advice, what would be the best advice you could give them to actually get a track signed by a major label?
Um, make make sure that you haven't rushed it. Make sure that it is a track you're entirely happy with. Make sure that you get really good feedback from other producers as well. Like constructive criticism is the biggest weapon in your arsenal. If the if people are just saying, yeah, that's sick, oh, that's awesome, oh, that's a banger, that's just as useless as saying, oh, that's shit. You haven't really given anyone any feedback if you're just saying like useless superlatives. It's better to just say, oh, I really like that, but I feel like it could be that the snare drum could be a little bit harder, a little bit tighter. I think the musical line needs a little bit of work. And if you're getting that kind of feedback, that is so important. And listening to that feedback, taking it on board humbly is again really important as well. I mean, like I used to be pretty naff with feedback and just thought that my music was amazing, but it wasn't. So when I started actually listening to feedback, it's really helped me improve a lot. And once you're getting tracks that are getting really good feedback and you're constantly building them up and you're getting other people are playing them out and we're getting really good videos, then think about sending it to the major labels, because then you really want to make sure that the first contact with a major label is so important, because you want to make sure that the first contact they see from you is your best at the time.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And obviously the Ingrate VIP, you mentioned, getting feedback and things like that. This one actually blew up. I bet a lot of the crowd feedback as well is really good, isn't it, on those tracks?
Yeah, yeah, the crowd reaction is insane. Like just hearing people go mad for it is unreal.
And obviously the flip side, or should we say track two, we're not doing vinyls anymore. I still got that ingrated in me from the vinyl days. I always say the B side or the flip side, but it isn't really. It's like a double A release, this Ingrate VIP on Dirtbox. We've got Unchained, which we
Yeah,
talked a little bit about earlier. What was the process in getting this together? Did you, because you made this straight away just for this EP? It was a fresh track. Was
yeah.
it was it done in a way to complement Ingrate, or you just went with the flow on this one to see what I thought?
I just really went with the flow on it, to be honest. I just wanted to make a sort of industrial style or rolling, not quite neuro, but harder than rollers. And yeah, I built the drum line first, was really happy with the drum line, and then just started messing around with synthesis, and yeah, just made these really cool sort of metallic edged sounds using a comb filter again. And yeah, it ended up being quite a dark track, which I was really happy with.
Yeah, I've promoted it out already, and the feedback coming in is it's literally 50-50. I mean, I thought possibly Ingrate VIP would kind of have the lion's share of everybody going mad, but everybody seems to be torn between the two tracks on the promo, which is great, I feel.
Yeah, yeah, I was really happy with that. It was really good to see like both tracks doing really well. I mean, both of them were single sessioners, which is
Mm.
mad. But yeah, it's just amazing seeing that feedback from something that's maybe a little bit outside what people would usually expect from me.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah. Well, like I said, everybody seems to be touching on it. I'm loving that the EP's out on Dirtbox. I couldn't be happier with it, Ryan. Thank you for the
My
release.
pleasure.
And obviously, there's a lot more in store that people will just have to wait and hear with Dirtbox
Yeah,
and Shayper as well. Before I let you go, though, I've got a few, I wouldn't say quick fire questions, but I really want you to kind of come up with the answers. That's the first thing that comes to mind. You know, you
sure.
don't have to go into great detail, but just a few little fun questions, basically, to see what your thoughts are on it. Okay,
Mhm.
here we go. So, first question: what albums, and you can pick 2 or 3, can you listen to on repeat?
Linkin Park in the end. Uh, Disclosure, Settle, and Sub Focus, his first album.
Yeah, great choice. Great choice. Okay. So I've asked this question to a few of the people as well. And this one is based around being interesting. You know, doing these interviews, we have to get a story out of people, because if I just go in and ask the same old questions and just get mundane answers, nobody's going to watch these interviews. So
Yeah.
who do you think would be great and interesting for me to go and interview next on this show?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I don't know, maybe Calax and TV. That'd be a cool one.
That'd be a good shout. I would actually love to interview them as well. Maybe when you go down to the studio, you could put a good word in for me.
Yeah,
Get it
maybe.
sorted. What track in drum and bass do you wish that you made?
Oh, Bunchin Acolyte.
Great choice. Great choice. And name me one plan that you've got. Can be anything that's going to happen in 2023 before New Year's Eve.
Uh, I'm gonna make the hardest track I've ever made.
Great stuff. And make sure I hear that, because you know what
Yeah,
I'm like with the
absolutely, Lee, absolutely.
Brilliant. Listen, Ryan, thank you very much for your time today. It's
My
been
pleasure.
great. Probably longest we've had a time to kind of chat together as well. So great
Yeah.
to kind of know a little bit more about you as well. Loving this release. I'm so happy it's out on Dirtbox. As I said, it's absolutely phenomenal. Ingrate VIP and Unchained out on Dirtbox Recordings right now. You got any plugs or anyone to big up, Ryan, before I let you go?
Yeah. Big up everyone in the group chat. Big up my wife for being the most incredible sport I've ever asked for, and yeah, big up all the rest of my family and
Good lad.
friends.
Good lad. Thanks for your time, Ryan. You have a good afternoon, mate.
Yeah, you too, mate.
Cheers.